nomadic warriors born in the boundless grasslands of the steppe, singing the song of freedom and courage on horseback, a nation that sowed the first seeds of Turkish history. They were masters not only of war, but also of art, trade, and nomadic life. The first tribe where we find traces of Turks in history. The ancestors of the Turks and the first Turkish community, the Scythians. The geography of the steppe, the boundless homeland of the Scythians. The Pontic-Caspian steppe, the homeland of the Scythians, encompassed a vast geography that included modern Ukraine, southern Russia, part of Moldova, and part of Romania. From the lower reaches of the Danube River in the west to the Don River in the east, a vast area stretching from the shores of the Black Sea in the south to the forest steppe line beyond the Dnieper River in the north. This region was generally flat or slightly hilly, treeless or sparsely wooded, covered with vast grasslands. The provinces of Dnipro, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, and Odessa in modern Ukraine were places where the Scythians grazed their herds and set up their tents. In southern Russia, the regions of Rostov, Krasnodar, and Stavropol formed the eastern borders of the Scythians with the fertile banks of the Don River. The area around the Dniester River in Moldova and the Danube deltas, in the counties of Galați and Tulcea in Romania, marked the western boundaries. The steppe's climate was like a test. The scorching summers would burn the pastures in the Odessa and Kherson provinces of Ukraine with the sun. Temperatures would rise up to 40 degrees and winds would scatter dust clouds. Winters, however, brought freezing cold. In the Rostov region of southern Russia, snowstorms were common along the banks of the Don River. Temperature would drop to -20 or even -30 in some years. This harsh climate was not suitable for settled agriculture. The soil's fertility was low and water resources were limited. But the steppe pastures were ideal for large herds of animals. In the vast plains of Ukraine's Zaporizhia provinces, the Scythians grazed sheep, goats, cattle, and most importantly, horse herds. The Scythians lived in this region with seasonal migrations. In the summer, they would go up to the cool highlands. For instance, the Donetsk region, where the Donetsk hills are located in Ukraine, was ideal for summer highlands. The pastures there were more watered and the weather was cooler. In winter, they would move down to more sheltered winter pastures. The Kherson and Mykolaiv provinces along the banks of the Dnieper River were winter areas with wind-protected valleys. In summer, colorful tents in the plateaus of Donetsk. In winter, snow-covered encampments in Kherson. This constant movement gave the Scythians incredible resilience. Their ability to navigate the steppes, speed, and agility ensured both their survival and superiority over their enemies. The lower courses of the Dnieper, Don, Dniester, and Danube were life sources for the Scythians. The Dnieper River flows through the heart of Ukraine. In the Dnipro and Zaporizhia provinces, it served as both a water source and a trade route. In the blue bends of the Dnieper, the Scythians watered their herds and fished. The Don River stretches from Rostov to the Sea of Azov. It used to define the eastern boundary of the Scythians. The Dniester flows from Moldova and the Odessa region of Ukraine, serving as a natural border and a strategic passage point. The lower courses of the Danube formed fertile deltas in Romania's Galați and Tulcea counties. These were the Scythians' trade centers in the west. These rivers were not only water sources, but also used as trade routes and strategic points in wars. The Scythians knew every corner of the steppe like the back of their hand. They handed down information for generations about which pasture was fertile, the location of water sources, and where to be in each season. The Scythians, the first seeds of Turkish history. The Scythians were the first Turks of the steppe, and they were the first Turks of the steppe. They lived in the steppe, In the 9th century BC, they arrived in the steppe with a great migration wave towards the north of the Black Sea. As one of the oldest representatives of Turkish history, their language, culture, and nomadic lifestyle were later inherited by the Huns, Gökturks, and other Turkic tribes. These people, referred to as Saka in Turkish sources, were the first sprouts of Turkish history, carrying the spirit of the steppe. When Herodotus mentions the Scythians in his work, Histories, he details their love of freedom, mastery of the art of war, and nomadic lifestyle. A state structure could not be established in the history of the Scythians because their nomadic lifestyle kept them away from such formations. However, there are great victories in their history. King Darius the First of Persia attacked the land of the Scythians. However, the Scythians managed to virtually bury his massive army in the steppe. The world under the shadow of a man was trembling. That man was the great king sitting on the Persian throne, Darius the First. As the dates pointed to the end of the 6th century BC, Darius was not just a ruler. He was a conqueror who was feared across distant continents, bringing nations that had broken their chains to their knees. The mighty walls of Babylon had fallen before him, and the pharaohs of Egypt were forced to recognize his sovereignty. From India to Thrace, and from the Caucasus to the Arabian deserts, the sun rose under his rule across vast lands. In the year 522 before Christ, Darius I ascended the throne, quickly consolidating the Persian Empire into a great centralized state. He conquered important centers like Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. His goal was not just land, but world domination. Seeing himself as the chosen one of Ahura Mazda, Darius believed he was tasked with maintaining the divine order on earth. As a natural result of this expansion, Darius turned to the peoples north of the Black Sea, namely the Scythians. Because the Scythians were constantly raiding the Persian borders, disrupting peace in the Caucasus region. Additionally, the Scythians remained the only major people who refused to submit to the Persians and were uncontrollable. The Scythians were nomadic warriors of Indo-European origin. They lived in the steppes of what are today Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan. They were almost legendary in horseback warfare and master archery. They had no fixed cities, they did not practice agriculture, and carried out trade at a limited level. Their strongest advantage was mobility and guerrilla-like warfare tactics. According to Herodotus, their leader was Idanthricus, or in some sources Scopasis. He was a charismatic, intelligent commander who understood the lifestyle of his people. Instead of confronting the enemy directly, the Scythians employed attrition warfare. Darius decided to launch a great punitive campaign against the Scythians. His army was of immense size. He set out from Anatolia and reached the Danube River via Thrace. He had bridges built over the Danube. At the head of these bridges were Greek allies from Ionian cities. Darius crossed to the north of the Black Sea and entered Scythian territory. However, a completely different reality awaited him here. The Scythians did not appear to fight, did not attack cities, just retreated. As they retreated, they burned pastures, poisoned wells, and drew the enemy deeper. This was completely outside the classic Persian war mentality, because the Persians would defeat the enemy in a field battle, conquer the city, and impose taxes. However, the Scythians had no such cities. To them, land could change every day, but freedom was constant. Darius began chasing the Scythians with his army. According to Herodotus, this chase lasted for months. Darius kept marching, but he could neither win a battle nor achieve a result. The Scythians occasionally sent letters to Darius mockingly. In one, they sent the king a mouse, a frog, a bird, and 5 arrows. The meaning of these symbols was unclear, But the Scythians said, "Either enter the earth like us, mouse, dive into the water, frog, rise to the sky, bird, or fight arrow." Darius took this message as a threat, but in fact, the Scythians were trying to win by avoiding the battle. According to Herodotus, Darius's army began to be exhausted by hunger, fatigue, and disease. The massive Persian army lost its way in the steppe. The soldiers were fighting against both nature and the enemy, but they could never fully see the enemy. At one point, Darius acknowledged that it was pointless to follow the Scythians. He decided to retreat. But even this wasn't easy, because the Greeks, allies of the Persians, were about to destroy the bridges over the Danube. Darius turned back at the last moment and was forced to withdraw from Scythian territory, cutting the campaign short. At the end of this campaign, the Scythians were not defeated and they protected their land. Darius did not achieve a victory, but he was not absolutely defeated either. The Persians never launched another serious campaign into Scythian lands. This struggle showed how classical war strategy can be inadequate against asymmetrical warfare. The struggle between the Scythians and Darius was recounted by the historian Herodotus, but it also found a place in Scythian legends and folk tales. In some Scythian epics, Darius is described as a king, aspiring to become the lord of the sky, and is said to be punished by the gods of the steppe. Some sources mention that the Scythians offered sacrifices and rode their horses on the steppe, performing fire dances to celebrate this victory. Yes, the Scythians could not establish a state, but at that time, they stood out with their warrior identity. Don't forget to like and comment on the video.